morning to everyone. You are welcome again to our university. We will start the first plenary session. It's a pleasure and it's an honor to present Professor Francisco Ferreira, that will be our speaker, the first speaker. He is an associate professor with the Department of Environmental Sciences and Engineering of Nova School of Science and Technology, and he is a researcher in SENSE, that means Center for Environmental and Sustainability Research. He holds a degree in environmental engineering from FCT Nova, a master's degree from Virginia Tech, USA, and a PhD from Nova University from Lisbon. He has been developing work in the areas of air pollution, climate change, and sustainable development. In the last years, he was one of the coordinators of the technical work for 2050 carbon neutrality roadmap and the National Climate and Energy Plan to 2030 for Portugal, including the current revision of both documents. He is also the president of the National Environmental Non-Governmental Organization ZERO, Association for Sustainability of Earth System. As I said, it's the first time I met him in person. I just saw in television. He's always in television, in newspapers. It's really someone that we respect and we like, and has done a strong contribution for environmental awareness, citizen participation, and so many things. So welcome, and you have the voice.
So good morning to all of you. Thank you very much, Eduard, for the nice and kind words. I will speak in English. Podría también hablar portuñol, que me gusta mucho, pero que me parece que es mejor hablar en inglés. Because I know that there's a lot of people coming from Spain and Latin America, and those are countries that are really in the forefront of the challenges of climate change and sustainable development. So I have a presentation. I know that you already discussed a lot yesterday on the efforts by universities and the data related with some of the crises that we'll talk today. I believe that some of the points that I will show you today are areas that you know about, particularly because they are related with the efforts from the United Nations on the different crises that the world is living in. But I hope, at least if some of the data is familiar to you, that we will have an opportunity to discuss some of the issues during the debate. Okay, let me just run through. Okay, so what I will try to convey to you is that as you know, we have several crises, not only directly related with what we might think, but also other crises that are absolutely key for the near future. We do have a climate crisis. Probably the biggest challenge for humanity this century, but we also have a biodiversity crisis, and that is a huge challenge also for Portugal and for Europe. Fortunately, last week we had a vote in the European Parliament that will enable Europe and each of the countries in Europe to actually start one of the the goals coming from COP15 in 2022 in Montreal, where we want to have 30% of the terrestrial area, of the marine area, classified at a high protected level, and also to restore already those ecosystems that are being degraded. At the same time, we have also resources crisis, and here the ecological footprint is definitely the measure that we should look at in terms of what's happening in the consumption of our resources. But we also have something that is just crucial for sustainability, and that is basically a peace crisis. Last week in Lisbon, a well-known expert, Jeffrey Sachs, was here, and he actually presented the results and his vision on how to handle how we can make progress on the 17 goals of sustainable development. And he basically is completely right. How come we have such a huge challenge with the three crises that I just mentioned? How can we actually have the money to convey to those crises if we're spending millions in defense, in war, not only in Ukraine, not only in the Middle East, but also in Africa and in other countries. It's impossible for us to actually go forward with in the other goals if we don't look at peace as one of the key goals. I participated in the Stockholm Plus 50 conference, and it was a relatively small conference if you actually compare with the climate change conference. I don't know if you have been in the UNFCCC conferences, annual conferences, the last one in Dubai, the previous one in Egypt. We're talking about, sometimes 30,000, 40,000 participants during 2 weeks. This was a relatively small conference, only 2 days, around 6,000 participants, but really, really a key conference because you know that I don't know what 1972 means to you. I was 6 years old at that time, but it was really a key year. We had the book coming from Dennis and Daniela Meadows, The Limits to Growth, and all the work that started from that modeling perspective at that time, and it was the first main conference in 1972 in Stockholm, where the United Nations Environmental Program was actually created. So that's when we started. We didn't use the word sustainability at that time, but it was really the beginning to discuss these key issues at that time. Portugal was present also. It was 2 years before our revolution, and it was a way for us to start. The Portuguese Environmental National Commission began its work due to the participation in this conference. And I think that one of the most important issues is actually not only look at the targets that we have for 2015, looking at the Millennium Objectives, or 2030, looking at the Sustainable Development Goals, but it's to actually backtrack. It's to look at the numbers and the monitoring, the evaluation that we can perform with some of the data that we can get together in a combined analysis. And the numbers are just shocking, I would say. Only about a tenth of the hundreds of global targets in the areas of environment and sustainable development agreed within the United Nations were achieved. So basically, 10%. That's incredibly low. Now we also have the natural resources use continues to grow, but the problem is indeed the way it is distributed, and it is completely unevenly distributed between countries and within countries and regions. The poorest half of the global population owns just 2% of the total global wealth, while the richest 10% own 76% of all wealth. The poorest half of the global population contributed 10% of the greenhouse gases emissions, contributing to global warming and climate change. But the richest 10% of the global population emitted more than half of that carbon, at least looking at the period 1990 to 2015. If you are born today, you'll probably be exposed to 7 times more heat waves than someone born in 1960. Humans have altered 75% of the planet's land surface, impacted 60% of the ocean area, and destroyed 85% of the wetlands, which is one of the most productive ecosystems that we have. Sometimes we only think about coral reefs and the Amazon forest, but wetlands are actually one of the key ecosystem areas. So we have basically a tripled of the extraction of natural resources since 1970. And when it comes to budgeting, when it comes to money, it's incredible. To fulfill the Sustainable Development Goals until 2030, we would need 2.3 trillion euros. Not that much in terms of difference compared with dollars, but it's huge, and no country is giving its citizens what they need without transgressing the planetary biophysical limits. So we're really in the need to actually change, and that change, that's what I'm going to talk about. That change is basically a change that has key players, and those players are countries, are municipalities, and are basically all the population, particularly the ones that have literacy, the ones that understand and can make that change. Let's start with global warming. I'm actually using some slides from Al Gore. He has a presentation on a climate reality project I also belong to. And indeed, it's amazing. We're spewing 152 million tons of man-made global warming pollution into the thin shell of our atmosphere every 24 hours. So we don't see it, but we actually treat this tiny layer of the atmosphere as an open sewer. And basically, this comes not only to what we put into the atmosphere in terms of greenhouse gases, but also by destroying the capacity to take that carbon out of the atmosphere. In Portugal in 2017, we had huge forest fires. More than 100 people died during the 2 weekends, one in June and one in October. And all that carbon basically returned to the atmosphere. And it was a huge amount of forest that burned, besides, of course, the loss of human lives. And at the same time, we're cutting the forest. Brazil was supposed to be actually to have negative emissions due to the Amazon. And what is happening is that we actually have Brazil with positive emissions. And then we have this cycle where, for instance, the permafrost is emitting methane by a warming within a warming climate. Transportation, fossil fuels, what's going on. This is basically the main graph of what is happening after 1950. we really went exponentially on the amount of use of fossil fuels, natural gas, oil, and of course coal. This is how the temperature evolved up to 2023, which is the record year. We usually start these measurements from 1850 because that's when we started to have thermometers and make those measurements. But this gives you basically a good trend of what is happening. And the 10 hottest years on record have been the last 10 years. So this is actually in order. The warmest was 2023, then ex aequo 2020 and 2016, and then the others. But the 10 hottest ones were the last 10 years. Many parts of the tropics, in particular, home to 3 billion people out of the 9 billion we're heading to, will experience unlivable heat and humidity if global temperature rises more than 1.5. And you know that we are very close to 1.5. We had 1.45, but it was only for 2023. We need to see how this pattern will be consistent or not during the next years. But it's we're very, very close to this unfortunate target. And I would like to stress, because for Portugal, this is just incredibly important. We had in 2022 the second United Nations conference on oceans. Next year will be in France. And we are basically being saved by the oceans. I don't know if you have this idea, but 93% of the extra heat that we're putting in the atmosphere has been absorbed by the ocean. Of course, with the problems with the coral reefs that are extremely sensitive because the algae that has a symbiosis with the coral, die with actually the corals get into stress and they expel the algae that give them the nutrients. So we have a warmer ocean, but indeed, and we also have a more acidic ocean due to the CO2 in the atmosphere. But it's the ocean that has been suffering the most with the problems of climate change. Last year in 2023, it was the first time that we actually had Category 5 storms in all oceans. And I think it's the same in Portugal and in English. You probably know that we call hurricanes in Atlantic, we call typhoons in Pacific, and we call cyclones in the Indian Ocean. But we had them, all together last year. And this year already, we have a very soon, very early Category 4 hurricane in the Atlantic Ocean, affecting already a group of islands. And we had in Europe, forest fires in Greece, but we also had it in Hawaii, in Canada. We have even firefighters going from Portugal to Norway, which is just something that you would consider impossible 1 decade ago. And you had the different hurricanes, you had the different records of temperature. Today in Portugal, we're getting temperatures around 41 degrees Celsius in the south. So again, something that might happen, but is becoming more and more common. These are photos from the COP27 and COP28, so in Sharm el-Sheikh and Dubai. What I want to tell you is how important has been the relationship between the policy and the policy and the science. It was the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Climate Change Panel on Climate Change, that was created in 1988, so 4 years before, with the first report in 1990, that actually managed us to have 3 conventions in Brazil, in ECO 92, in Rio. The biological diversity, climate change, and desertification. Those were the 3 UN conventions. In COP3 in 1997, we have Kyoto Protocol, then we have the failed agreement in Copenhagen. We have the first targets with the Paris, in the Paris Agreement by 2015, then Glasgow, and next year it will be again a key conference in Belém in Brazil with new targets, but of course these new targets, as I will show you, are far from what we really need. António Guterres, former Portuguese Prime Minister that is currently the UN Secretary General, I think that I believe he has plenty of marketing support, but it's hard for him to actually get words. And he basically said, recently that the era of global warming has ended, the era of global boiling has arrived. And other words that he said in Egypt, like we're going into a highway to hell with this, with foot in the accelerator. So this is what is happening. I know this is a kind of a complicated graph, but we, according to the Paris Agreement, we should run to a 1.5 target, preferably. But the 2 degrees Celsius warming is kind of the maximum. But currently, depending on the so-called national determined contributions, this is basically what was presented by the United Nations before the conference in Dubai. We're currently heading to 2.8. If we manage to comply with all the NDCs, we'll go to 2.6. If we go a little bit extra, we go to 2.4. So we're far from reaching 1.5. It's very important to have, when we talk about climate change, it's extremely important to mix the historic and the current situation. Because if you go to the historical CO2 emissions, you see that China is only responsible for 13%. The US is the one that is the most responsible with 19%, and Europe 13%. Of course, if you go to the 2021 emissions data, you get China with 30%, and you get Europe with only 7%, the US with 11%. But when you go to the population, that's where I believe we get the highest difference. But we can look at that in a per capita terms in the next slide. So currently we have China, US, India, EU, the Russian Federation, Brazil, Indonesia, and then we also have this nice country called international transport with all the navigation and aviation representing an increased weight on the emissions worldwide. LULUCF is the land use and land use change in forestry. Basically, those are the carbon sinks. And you can see that in China or in the US or in India or in the Russian Federation, they play a role on the negative part. But for instance, in Brazil or in Indonesia, they actually add to the emissions of the countries. When we look at the per capita emissions, I know some of you are Americans, and you see that we're still looking at US and as one of the countries with the highest greenhouse gases emissions per capita. Of course, we have countries in the Middle East that are much higher, but with the population that's that's relevant. And India, which is currently the most populated country in the world, we do have a relatively small per capita. In Portugal, for you to know, we're actually below the average of the European Union. We're currently around 5.5 tons, and that is quite you know, and has been stable. We also need to decrease. On biodiversity, the issue is not, you know, we tend to look a lot to the species and to forests, but the main issue is the ecosystems. That's what we really need to preserve, to maintain. We have now issues with the pollinators that are essential for plant reproduction and for our food production, and we're losing them. And if we actually, you know, a lot of people may think that the United Nations and all the agreements worldwide already managed us not to lose forest worldwide. That's not true. That's actually a goal for us for 2030. So currently, we're actually, if you look at the last numbers from 2015 to 2020, we're currently cutting or destroying the double of the forest that we plant. And we'll have a net zero, we'll have an equilibrium only by 2030. So if you look at the species perspective, a United Nations report for 2019, which was the broadest one recently, you know, we were losing 1 million species. But again, the issue is not only the species, complexity, biodiversity is the fundamental issue for our survival. And the problem is that this 6th mass extinction event is due mostly because of the destruction of land and oceans. And then I know you talked about this yesterday also, is the ecological footprint. And we have the overshoot day when we start to use our credit card, when the renewable resources that we have are not sufficient for us. Again, we have to look at an equilibrium between what is our natural capital, what is being produced and what is being consumed. And you see that Europe and the eastern part of the US are really the most problematic areas. Of course, India and China are also in deficit. And this is how, up to 2019, the evolution has been going through, with an increased use of cropland and carbon emissions. The Earth Overshoot Day this year will be in August, in the beginning of August. But you can see that that with the exception of 2020 due to the pandemic and a little bit of stability, we still need 1.7 planets, meaning that we're not using the renewable resources, the renewable energy, the renewable materials. We have to go to our savings account to actually maintain in operation our society. These are the country overshoot days. You can see that we already, I know that it's probably hard for you to find your country, but Portugal was May 28th. But you have Bolivia with July 17th, Costa Rica in July 31st, Brazil August 4th, Mexico August 29th. So we still have countries with still a lot of renewable resources, and we have Ecuador and Indonesia only by November 24th. So the earlier the worse. I think that this writer from the beginning of the 20th century put it all in a clear, very clear way. Chesterton, in All Things Considered, I think this is also the name of an NPR. I don't know if it still exists, but I listened to almost every day, in the US. But in the book, he basically said there are two ways to have enough. One is to continue to accumulate more and more, and the other is to desire less. And you know that, when we are depressed, we buy a piece of clothes if we can. We eat a little bit of chocolate, and that overcomes our frustration and depression. But the main issue is really to understand that well-being is depending on our mind, on actually this idea to desire less. That's the way we have to go. And the hidden impact of what we have is just amazing. A smartphone requires almost 13,000 liters of water. You know these numbers for sure. One of the areas that are now most critical is the textiles, with a T-shirt requiring around 4,000 liters of water. Even a cup of coffee requires 136 liters of water. And so COVID, it had a huge impact, but it's the smallest wave. It's climate change, it's the biodiversity that really are the big waves. So we need a new paradigm. We need to as Eduardo said, besides being a professor at Nova University, I'm also heading I would say the most active environmental NGO in Portugal, and the way we have been talking about this is basically through this paradigm shift that is required. And sorry to be in Portuguese. The first thing on the Sustainable Development Goals is for you to understand the priorities. And the priorities mean that they are not equal. Without the biosphere, society cannot exist and the economy cannot exist. So when we actually say that, look, these are the three areas: economy, the social, the economic, the environment, and the governance. Let's be absolutely clear, because sometimes you have companies saying, "Oh, without the economy, the society, people could not work." Yes, but without the materials and the energy that you take from the biosphere, definitely no one could survive. Not the society, not the economy. When I look at the 17 goals, I do prefer this one, and it works in Portuguese. I don't know in Spanish, but in English it definitely works. The 5 Ps: people, prosperity, peace, partnership, and planet. It's an easy way for you to actually understand the different components, and sometimes much better than have to run through the 17 goals. But you have to combine these with what the Stockholm Institute has been pushing for, which is talk about the limits of the planet and where we are going over those limits in climate change, in biodiversity, in land conversion, and of course, when you look at the so-called donut economics, you have to include here the social component. So from a degenerative take, make, use, and lose, basically, look at the ecological footprint and look at your biocapacity, transportation, which in Portugal is the main factor of carbon emissions, and food, and come up, just look at the ecosystems and look at it within this idea of regenerative economy. So basically, in Europe, fortunately, we're getting a little bit of this. If you put a washing machine, now you have to assure for 10 years that you have the pieces to repair that washing machine. You have to give the instructions for people to actually give them the possibility to repair. The idea of having a car instead of sharing a car, I know it's very hard for a lot of us. It's complicated. In my family, we're five, and it's basically the older children, which are not children anymore, they use the car during the weekends and we run out of car on Saturday and Sunday because they want to go with their girlfriend and boyfriend, and but it's a way not for us to have a car for each one. So we really need to think about the real ecosystem circularity. To finish up, let me just tell you that in Europe and worldwide, we start to talk about a pact for the future. That is the idea of actually from the United Nations. And it's basically when you discuss the future we want, it's basically in this direction. And in Europe, with some failures, because Europe, to be consistent with the Paris Agreement, was supposed to become carbon neutral by 2040. And our goal is to become carbon neutral by 2050. Portugal already anticipated that to 2045. But the point, and China, for instance, which has a goal of 2060, maybe also has to anticipate that target. Unfortunately, the consequences are what will be the drivers to mitigate the emissions instead of us knowing what is going to happen and making the change. But let me just tell you that, like in the US, you come up with the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act. In Europe, we had the European Green Deal 5 years ago, and it touched everything. It's really one of the most important deals we have. You know, you have climate, you have renewables. By the way, in Portugal, our electricity in the last few months, 83% comes from renewable sources, and we don't have nuclear, we don't have coal anymore since 2021. So it is possible for us actually to have several days only with renewables. And we don't have the interconnections with other countries that we would like. We're really at the western part of Europe. But this Zero Pollution Act, we're now looking at the new regulations, the new recommendations of the World Health Organization. We're trying to get the targets of the Biodiversity Convention. Europe also looked at the farm to fork. That has been an issue because of the conflicts with farmers in several countries, including in Portugal, and the use of water and the impact of use of fertilizers. Accelerating the shift to sustainable and smart mobility. But this was really, really a nice package. It has, a lot of these has to be implemented though. But the European Green Deal, I think is a good example to be followed worldwide. Even though there's, again, a lot of failures. We're not financing a lot of the countries that would need money from developed countries like Europe to actually support the basic financing from the Paris Agreement or the loss and damage fund that became operational in Dubai and other types of international financing. So action. These are the keywords: rethink, connect, refuse, reduce, reuse, repair, share knowledge, recycle. It was kind of a hard compilation of a lot of R's, but a C and two S's. But it kind of gives you, the right motivation on what we think. And from the Stockholm conference, they put in a document, in a quite nice document, what would be the 3 keys to unlock the future. And one is to redefine the relationship between humans and nature. That is really one of the key issues, not only outside cities, but mainly in cities, in urban areas, and with a broader perspective, like protecting animal welfare, developing governance, expand and invest in nature-based education, recognize local indigenous knowledge and the rights of nature. The 3 keys, under the 3 keys, is ensure lasting prosperity for all. And the problem is that make a sustainable lifestyle the easy choice. This is the most difficult thing. That's the reason why people do not live sustainably. Because, you know, let me give you an example. You want to go to Madrid from Lisbon. If you take a flight, you might manage with a low-cost airline to just pay 39 euros, or eventually 29 euros. With EasyJet, Ryanair, you know, just grab your bottle of water without water because of the security, but and the computer, and you go with 20 euros. If you want to go by train, it takes you 11 hours, and you have to go north, change train, take a second train. Now you're in the border with Spain, and then you take a third train. Okay, if you want to go to Paris, it takes you 2 days, and you have to sleep 1 night in Madrid. And the cost of that is not 29 euros. So that's, you know, it's much harder to actually, you know, live sustainably or even travel sustainably. So that's the key issues, the supply chains, the need for the energy transition that also has a lot of impacts. And invest in the better future. Recognize and improve public funding of technology, innovation, and co-development. And of course, private finance has a key role. I remember that, you know, in the discussion, I've been in the UN FCCC conferences every year since 2000. And in Dubai, the Loss and Damage Fund, the contribution for Portugal was 5 million. But we have banks that got more than €1 billion of profit last year. And the contribution from the US was 17.5 million euros. So it's completely unproportional. So reuse and repair is my second idea. Here is just examples from Flanders in Belgium, in Spain, repairing trucks in Austria, create a reuse culture, and reuse means a lot more jobs compared with a non-circular perspective. And you know, we have a lot of another thing is, of course, for you to buy things that, you know, you can use it for a long time. One trick is try not to get overweight, such that you can use it longer. And for food, this is for Portugal. We actually, do you know that in Portugal is the 3rd country in the world where we eat more fish, 33 kilos per capita per year. A lot of cod fish, okay, that you probably might have experienced already. But for health and for environment, we really need to change our diet. That is absolutely crucial in terms of the biodiversity, resources, and climate change impact. And these are just the impacts on CO2 from the different, you can see beef, dairy, poultry. You have here the different comparisons. Simple steps on food: less animal protein, locally grown, seasonal, more vegetable, organic products, unprocessed foods. You know all this. And the danger of greenwashing. That is a critical matter that the European Commission, we just discussed, we approved actually a directive to avoid things. Nothing is 100% green, we know that. Electric cars do have a lot of problems with lithium, with cobalt, with so the important thing is the public transport. But greenwashing is becoming a madness. Like you go to an airport in Italy And you get these messages, you know, like net zero emission by 2030, but it's only the airport, okay? And you're buying forests in Africa to compensate for the emissions. And the green finance, or you go to the UK and you have award-winning carbon neutral coffee. That's the flavor is completely different. So we really need to take care of this. Even the cups, you know, we have these new cups in Portugal, and you don't know where to put them for the recycling. It's confusing because it's actually cardboard, but it says that it also has a little bit of plastic, so people don't know where to put if it's in the yellow or blue or the normal trash container. 2 last slides. Sorry, I got it too long. Until now, that's what we've been doing. Wealth, continuous growth, efficiency, having more, constant insatisfaction. And for the future, we need to change wealth by well-being. That's the real key, the new word, quality. And the most important word that we have, in zero, we actually, and by the way, zero is, we chose the name of the organization because it's the idea of zero loss of biodiversity, zero pollution, zero emissions. You get that, right? But sufficiency is really the most important word. You know, we need to use what, without losing our quality of life, we need to use, we need to avoid waste, basically. And of course, we have most of the people having to have, it's not an issue of sufficiency because they don't have enough for the minimum quality of life, but a lot of people in developed countries are just well above what we really need to have a good well-being. So it's time for responsibility, optimism. I know that I showed a lot of slides that were not that optimistic, but it was in the first part. Urgency, resilience. I think we didn't learn that much with the pandemic. We even in Portugal, you know, we got records of air quality, great air quality, and a lot of good ideas on what to do, and we're losing that, but also creativity and innovation. And by the way, this is one of the most important pictures because it was not scheduled. Actually, it was out of schedule. The William Anders that just died around 3-4 weeks ago. He was the astronaut going to the moon, not only in the orbit, and they had a limited number of photos, and he took this photo, I believe, December 24th, 1968, in one of the Apollo missions. And it gave us, you know, it was a really important photo for the environmental movement worldwide, because it showed us that we really only have a planet, and it really depends on our capabilities to you know, to get us all together in this mission, again with key partners. It's not just us. It has to be politicians at the local level, at the national level, at the international level. And multilateralism is definitely a way to go. These are the key actors for us to save ourselves, because, as you know, the planet can survive without us. We cannot survive without the ecosystems and the biodiversity that we have in our earth. Thank you very much, and I believe we have some time for questions.
Thank you, Professor Francisco Ferreira. He finished at 10, very strict, thank you. This means that we have still 10 minutes to talk, to debate. I think it's important to debate this opportunity to share knowledge, to share information, but also to share emotions, because somehow these numbers are shocking. We know most of them, but I think it's always important to put this number in the front of us. So we want to start putting questions, reflections. Yes.
Yes, thank you.
The micro is coming.
Very thorough presentation. Thank you. But I want to know, are there any statistics about the difference between individual human action on these goals and systemic action? Because what you showed was, yes, we've had decades of saying individual action, you know, and individuals can try, but the trends are all going in the other direction. And I'll just finish by saying the ancient Greeks used to say pan metron ariston, everything, you know, in moderation. But in New York, they say excess is not enough. That's where we are. Excess is not enough. And it's hard to change that mindset. So I want to know if there's any evidence that individual humans making these choices can tilt the direction that we're heading on. It's a hard question, I know.
Yeah, I think I feel a little bit like the conflict between the psychologists and the sociologists. You know, like having and to be honest, I think there is an individual action, starting by when you vote, when you choose your politicians, when you, of course, when in the way of life that you have. But I think that's I think there are, you know, some of the reports from the United Nations and from the European Environmental Agency, they actually look a bit of the individual actions versus the how should I say, the top-down the top-down systemic actions. But there's always an interface. It's impossible to separate them. I tend to blame more the politicians than the individuals, to be honest, because I think, you know, even there are. Let me give you an example. Plastic bags in Portugal. The moment we put a tax of 10 cents in a plastic bag, it completely changed. You know, no one now goes to the supermarket unless, you know, there was it's unavoidable because you have to go to the supermarket and you forgot everything at home. But you actually take your own bags. If we didn't have this tax, I don't think we would have that change. If we have, if you look at public transport in Lisbon, the amount of people using public transport increased extensively because we started in the metropolitan areas of Lisbon and Porto a monthly pass of 40 euros. So you can travel 100 kilometers with 40 euros in any means of transport. So those are really public policies. They're absolutely decisive. And of course, you're also lacking on the other ground, which is sometimes you don't, you know, in terms of supply and demand, you sometimes just work in one of them. And you can still easily come with a car to Lisbon, and you're not working both ways. But coming to your point, I think that we're not getting there with environmental education. We don't have the time, you know, for us to talk about, look, we have our undergraduate and graduate students. Oh, we have the primary school. Of course, that is absolutely essential. But we are on a climate emergency. We need measures. We need, you know, environmental education for all and now. And that, I think, is really a public responsibility and immediate responsibility. And that only comes with the price tags. that's we need to safeguard the people that have, less resources. But we really, it's unbelievable. How come you go to a gas pump station, and in Portugal you pay the VAT, you pay the oil tax, and you pay a carbon tax. Okay, you have to pay these 3 taxes. Still, it's not that costly. But if you use an airline, the fuel doesn't pay any taxes. The tickets even don't pay any taxes. In Europe, within Europe, the airlines do pay a little bit of carbon, but it's only 15%. It's going to be 100 in a couple of years, but it's only 15%. If you go to the US, it's completely different between Portugal and the US. For instance, it's under the CORSIA and the United Nations, and you have to compensate your emissions. And compensation is a lot of greenwashing. So we really need those policies. I think that it's important to talk how individuals change, but we really need to have actions from the local level, and they're particularly important. In Portugal now we have to have municipal climate action plans and regional climate action plans. That's part of our climate law. To have a climate law is also relevant, but yes, I already talked too much. So.
Good morning. Can you speak to the increase in electric vehicles and whether the use of them is helpful or if the production of them is harmful? Which is better?
Okay. Yeah. I actually love to talk about electric vehicles, so that's the reason why I looked at my watch. The first thing is that you have to put the right question, and the right question is, what I really love are electric buses, okay, and electric trains and public transport. Okay, so we have a society that requires higher mobility. That's fine. It's good for people to travel, to talk with others, to actually enjoy other parts, at least of the country, and you have to live with the differences where you work, where you live. So those are the priorities. Now let's go to electric vehicles. Electric vehicles are just great in terms of efficiency. An electric vehicle has an efficiency, around 70 to 80% from the renewable electricity that should be the source, like in Portugal, as I said, to your use. While a combustion engine has an efficiency of 20 to 25%, meaning that the energy that you have, only 20 to 25% will be used for the movement. Now, if you go to the construction of the electric vehicle has a much higher footprint than the combustion engine. A bit higher. But then if it fully compensates on the use. And but you have problems. The first problem are basically the raw materials, the critical raw materials, and where you get them, how you get them. Issues like human rights, issues like, of course, environmental pollution, the conflicts that you have with China trying to get all those materials from different parts of the world, from Latin America, Central America to Africa. Europe now also wants to go on the race, and we have issues in Portugal with two lithium mines. That one in particular will impact a lot the population close to in a village. So it's a way to go, but you have to be extremely critical to actually assure that you have a huge recycling rate of the materials that you have in those electric vehicles. There is legislation in Europe. There's one important thing that when you think about the battery in a car is only its first life. it's not true that after the car uses that battery, the battery is disposed of or recycled. No, you actually have 2, 3, 4 lives of that battery before it becomes dismantled. So if you look at the life cycle analysis of an electric vehicle, has a lot of cons, but it's definitely much better compared with a combustion engine, due to the efficiency, due to the due to the use of renewable electricity, due to the possibilities of recycling. But again, the best thing is for you to use public transport and walk and cycle. It's a challenge for you to cycle in Lisbon. You should try. But there are a system of shared bikes. Just to let you know that a couple of weeks ago, I was using one of those shared bikes, and I just put the wheel in the tram, and I fall in front of a policeman. And he was quite nice, and he helped me. I was not that damaged, but if you do that, just be careful with these two modes of good transportation: the tram with electricity and the bike with your power and a little bit of electricity too.
Okay, we are almost on time to do the breakfast, but one last question, please. Okay.
I'll be short in this one.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I was noticing your charts that looked at different countries, but thinking about how we have inequity throughout the world, even in the United States, I'm sure a homeless person does not emit or use as much energy and resources as, say, Jeff Bezos. And so we all know who he is, right? Amazon, right? And I think that there is probably a group of elite, for a lack of a better word, who use exponentially more resources than the rest of us. Are there charts or trackings of that sort of thing?
Are there, sorry?
Charts, or are they tracking the differences? I mean, it's all well to look at countries, but even within the U.S., there's a huge range and a lot of people trying to live efficiently inside of systems that don't allow it very much. But there's also a group of people who aren't even trying.
I've been reading to some of the papers that do make that comparison. I would have to find them, but there are indeed studies that within the country, and we have that in Portugal also, you know, and as I said, there are differences between countries, but there are a lot, huge differences within the country. And there are also reports coming out with the greenwashing by large companies, particularly on the emissions, such as Amazon or even Google, that, you know, when you go deeper into the use of energy and the real alternatives that they have, they're far from the commitments that they should have. But it's indeed this, you know, in a project in the university, we asked one of the main truck companies working in Portugal, and he said, look, you cannot imagine, we have one day with a full truck coming from Spain with Amazon boxes, and we have another day where we just have, you know, a couple of boxes in the truck. But it's this one-day delivery, this excitement of having everything at your door the next day, that is costing environment has a huge cost for the environment. So that is a trend that not only in the US but also in Europe we do have to change. We have to pay for that impact. But of course, we need to put that people with the lower resources, with the up to a quality of life that they deserve, and that we are not taking care. There were, oh, okay. We're cutting on your half-hour coffee break, so
Thank you for your presentation. I know if a country have a problem, they put embargo on that country in terms of some regulation. But when multinational abusing the environment, there's no embargo on them. Is it corruption, or is it from home you accept to be doing something abroad compare what they do at home? What is your view?
It's a mixture of factors. Each case is one case, and I think I completely embrace the vision from the UN Secretary General that we need multilateralism. We need to not to look at each country separately. We need rules that are respective for all the countries and within the countries. So that's true. That's sometimes a mixture of taxes, corruption, different ways to look at. Again, each case is a different case. So not a precise answer, unfortunately.
One last question. Okay.
Thank you very much. Long time no see.
Yeah.
Yes. Maybe 30 years ago. 30 years ago, no, long time. It is not a question, but thank you again for your amazing speech, for your amazing willingness to strive and try to change. I want to give you another P for the donut. And in my opinion, is the most important P that lacks over there. And it's like a donut. You buy a donut, and usually they give you a small container, hopefully in paper, okay? But if you don't have the container, and if you have to walk on the street, the donut starts to crumble and melting in your hand. So you need something to grab. And it is the same thing with the donut of the peas. And the pea is proud to achieve them, proud to do not give up, proud to go through all the bad days that we have. Because if we don't have the willingness inside us, we don't achieve any of these peace. And proud is something that we have, and it is something that we have also for the others. So please, at your classes, add the other P. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. The only problem I see is that when I translate to Portuguese, I'm gonna miss the P. But no worries. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Let's end, maybe we can end with this idea. Let's be proud to desire less. Thank you.
Which is a scenario towards human extinction, because it is the option.
It's already so depressing, the first couple of slides, that if I do that...
You need to have that, because that's where we're heading.
That's true.
Because
That's true.
individuals, we cannot, as individuals, respond, and individuals vote for those politicians. And the politicians do what the individuals want, give them lots of things. You know, ChatGPT uses more electricity than anything else.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And all of this is. So you do need not to fool us. Put the extinction slide.
It's it's a higher degree of depression, but
Yeah,
it
no,
might work.
I think it needs. You need to say this is the pathway to human extinction.
Yeah. And it is.
And if you're Elon Musk, you're going to try and go to Mars.
Total madness.
He was
Why
with
do you need
Mars.
why do you need to go to space?
That's said this is just, you don't have to do any of this.
Yeah, that's a
Anyway, thank you.
okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
Encheu de magma.
Olá, então, tudo bem?
Já não se lembra, na altura eu era morena,
É.
tinha cabelo curto.
E hoje, Jesus?
Não. Eu
Eu já-
tinha menos cabelo, eu tinha mais.
Desde os 18 anos, 20 anos, não estou muito diferente, para o bem e para o mal.
Mas aqui havia mais, aqui havia mais.
Ligeiramente, sim. Ok, obrigadíssimo. Vou só ali passar pelo café.
Vamos lá, pessoal.
Eu queria pôr a minha
Tá bem, vamos lá.
apresentação aqui.
Isabel vai agora